Welcome everyone to Screams After Midnight. I am Peter, and joining me as always is Tim.
I guess I'm the asshole.
You do have a little bit of that Jared Padalecki haircut, you know, it's not far off. It's a little there. We, of course, are a horror movie podcast, and it is the Octoberthon. It is the special holiday season of horror movies. It is the festive time of year where we go through a marathon load of horror films and episodes for the course of October. And this is kind of a special occasion because we are finishing off a franchise, a 12 movie franchise in total that we started on the Octoberthon 2 years ago. And that is, of course, the 2009 remake of Friday the 13th, completely wrapping up Friday the 13th completely, that we started 2 years ago. So it's nice to finally do this. We're doing this, of course, with Nightmare on Elm Street as well this month, wrapping that up, which had less movies, but we had to keep them kind of in sync so that we could do Freddy vs. Jason at the right place for both of them.
Yeah.
But it's kind of a big deal. We finally get to, write this one off, and we can move on to other franchises potentially. So yeah, we'll start spoiler free, of course, as we always do, and we will give you a warning before we go into spoilers. This is the 2009 film, which I can't believe that this is 11 years old already. It's kind of insane. There's a bigger gap now from this to now. Who knows when we get the next one, especially given the legal disputes with Friday the 13th. But there's a bigger gap between this and now than there was between any other two Friday the 13th movies.
Wow.
Yeah, that's kind of where we're at now. Because this was only 6 years after Freddy vs. Jason, and even if you don't count that, it's only 7 years after Jason X. So just to put that in perspective, how long it's been now since we've had a Friday the 13th movie, and this is the one we got. So we're going to discover here if this was a fitting entry that satisfied our needs for the next decade or so, and possibly longer. We'll find out. So as far as just sort of setting up the premise of this, I guess the only thing I'll say in terms of plot before we get to spoilers is that it kind of does this thing where obviously it wants to get to Jason in the hockey mask, so it kind of does like a minor flashback to kind of remake Friday the 13th one, and then it has like a prologue scene that essentially is this movie's version of Friday the 13th 2, and then most of the movie is kind of its remake of Friday the 13th Part 3. I mean, the plot isn't really anything like Part 3's, just in the sense that it's where he gets the hockey mask, so he's got the hockey mask. And then it's got its own little quirks and things that make it its own version of Jason and so on. So a group of characters come to spend the weekend at this house that's near Camp Crystal Lake, and there's their main character is Jared Padalecki.
Padalecki.
There you go. He of course was in this because he was in Supernatural. In fact, I was saying this because I was watching this on stream last night, and I was saying that it's kind of like notable that he was in this, and at the same time Jensen Ackles was in the My Bloody Valentine remake, because they were both in Supernatural, and Supernatural was doing quite well. And at the time, in 2009, they would have been on like the middle of season 3 or 4 Supernatural. Supernatural is still only just about to end in 2020. That's how long that show went. 15 seasons, and that's like how long. Like they were in this because Supernatural was the hot new thing at the time, relatively speaking. So,
and it's not the only horror remake he would be in, because he was also in House of Wax. I don't know if that was before or after this.
That was before. In fact, I think that was like, I want to say that was the same year as Supernatural season 1.
Okay.
Or about there, I think.
Yeah, so he's no stranger to horror remakes or reboots. Yeah.
We should actually both House of Wax and My Bloody Valentine are stuff that we should do, because we've done the originals of both. So we should get to it.
Yeah, I am definitely down.
I mean, I guess next Valentine's Day we'll do. I
was gonna say, yeah, if only there was a good day to do that one.
All right, fine. Next Valentine's Day, we promise. Not House of Wax, sorry. My Bloody Valentine.
That would be funny.
What a swerve. So yes, but that's not the only CW actor in this either, because the female lead is Danielle Panabaker or Painbaker, whatever her name is. She's Caitlin on The Flash. So it's kind of weird how this was like someone who was already on a CW show and then someone who was about to be on a CW show, and then other people who I didn't really recognize.
And we got one more.
Do we?
Yeah. Derek Mears himself appearing on CW's Swamp Thing.
I knew Jason was played by Derek Mears, but I thought you were going to go with like, and he was in Twin Peaks, or he was in the Hatchet series, or he was in, because he's been in a lot of horror stuff, right? Because he's a big guy, he plays a lot of big, monstery roles. But no, you went with Swamp Thing, which is technically also on CW now, even though it wasn't made for that. Yes, fair enough. I feel like he's actually popped up in like a guest role in a CW show anyway, as well.
I'm sure, yeah.
He's one of those guys who just pops up all over the place. So we have some cast, but I guess I'll ask the thing I was trying to say is that Jared Padalecki, his character, he's looking for his sister who came to the area 6 weeks prior. So he's looking for his missing sister, who obviously fell victim to Jason. So that's kind of the premise. It
also feels like his supernatural character, because that's kind of like a road show where like they go from town to town fighting demons and stuff, and like his character is not like too far off from that. Yeah, you're almost expecting Jensen Ackles to show up in the car at one point with shotguns for them to like go after Jason. But all right, Tim, how do you feel about? I mean, well, actually, first of all, let me ask this question. When was the last time you saw this? Had it been a while? Yeah, it had definitely been a while. I don't remember the last time I saw it, because it's hard for me not to watch this movie and think about the first time I saw it, because I went to see it on theaters on like a very awkward first date back in the day. And it was totally my bad. I just made it super awkward. So I remember that more than I'm sure I'd watched it since then, but I couldn't have told you when that would have been.
Part of me wants to ask how you made it super awkward. Like
it's just like one of those things where it's like because it was like I would have like at that time I was still working at Blockbuster, and I think I was like friends with like this girl there, and then it was one of those things where we got along really well, and then like my other friend was like, hey, like just so you know, like she likes you, so like you guys should like go out or whatever. And it's like once you find out someone likes you, then you start like being weird. And then it was just like one of those things where we went to the movies, and I just remember like we grabbed some dinner afterwards, and it was just like it was just like a lot of me like not knowing what to say, and just being like a lot of like, so what did you think about the movie, or like just like a lot of stuff like that, like I'm messing this up now because I don't know how to act once I find out that she liked me. But a very nice lady, but it didn't work out.
I was hoping it was going to be more like you opened the whole day. The first 30 minutes of the date was just really was like, here's another fact about goats, here's another thing you should know about goats, is what I was hoping you were going to say. Not that
was
relatively mundane example of just being on an awkward date.
I mean, unfortunately, that's how I was back when I was like younger. I was very shy. It wouldn't be until I was older that I started ruining it for like weirder reasons.
That is fair. So how do you feel about it?
So this is a movie I feel like a lot of people always bring it up when they talk about like remakes, because generally like remakes usually aren't good, and I feel like there's a few examples people always say like, oh yeah, but this one was good, and I feel like people always throw Friday the 13th in there, and I wouldn't necessarily agree with that. I don't think this is horrible, but I also don't think it's that good. There's a few cool things that it does, but overall, like there's like some decent kills. I actually do kind of like the like the long opening, that's kind of like a swerve. Yeah, as to terms of like, you know, who the main characters and stuff is going to be, but you know, it kind of suffers from like that remake thing where, you know, they have to explain a lot of stupid stuff that I don't think needs explaining. Survivalist Jason just doesn't really feel like the kind of Jason that I'm used to, that I like. It's an interesting idea, but it doesn't really work for me. And yeah, I do kind of find like most of the characters to be kind of annoying and irritating, and not in like a fun way. But
yeah, I'm kind of on board with a lot of what you just said. The movie isn't.
I just want to finish up like just real quick. Like, I don't want to be like too negative. Like, I think it is still kind of enjoyable, but overall, I'm not like a huge fan.
Yeah, I don't think it's a train wreck. It's not particularly good either. I think it benefits a little bit from just what Friday the 13th is, in the sense that as long as Jason is showing up and killing people, it can just kind of like feel like another sequel rather than having to care about the remakey side of things. And it is definitely worth mentioning the remakey things, like the over explaining stuff and try to like build more stuff out of the backstory, is definitely some of the worst stuff that the movie has. Totally. And you know, the characters, I agree, are unlikable. Like, I didn't like any of them. The characters that I'm supposed to like are just too bland to like, and the characters that are the dickbags are just annoyingly dickbaggish, and not in a fun way. They're just kind of like, just
like
hurry up and kill them.
Yeah. You know what I feel like it is you know, I feel like so much stuff is kind of playing off of like tropes like from the 80s, and I feel like a lot of people like look at cheesy horror movies back then, and they'll see that there's like these jerky characters, and I think like, you know, they'll just automatically be like, okay, yeah, so we should have some like modern day jerky characters. But like, I don't know, there's something about that like makes it like, all right, if I'm looking at like some over the top like preppy jerk from like, you know, a 70s or 80s movie, there's more of like a distance there, versus like, yeah, when they do it now, it's just like, well, this just feels like a real life douchebag. Like, it's not, you know, funny or entertaining. I don't know.
No, I was talking about this actually last night. There's something a bit more earnest about the characters in 80s movies, even though they're not necessarily that good, and even though the actors or the acting isn't necessarily that good either. Yeah. And I think it's kind of almost like there's something very kind of just kind of like honest about the badness of the characters in 80s movies, where like they don't necessarily realize they're being bad, right? Or at the very least they lean into the kind of the fun aspect of it, so you just kind of go along with it and have a good time. Whereas I feel like characters in a lot of modern horror movies, they try to go for almost a more grounded version of characters, but the problem is that in a slasher movie, you don't have great character work. You don't have great character stories or arcs or anything like that. So, like, they work better as being cliches. They work better as being kind of goofy or being kind of silly. Or they work better as just being something that maybe has one note but is kind of fun. Whereas when you try to just make them more realistic, they just kind of end up being really bland and annoying.
Yeah.
And all these other things. Not that you can't make a character that's over the top be annoying, because you totally can. What I thought was kind of weird though is that it's kind of going for this more grounded take on everything. It tries to like overly explain how Jason's able to do certain things and like whatever. But there is a couple of side characters that are oddly out of place, that they feel like they belong more in the original Friday the 13th movies than they do this one. I'm thinking there's it's the guy who works at the gas station. He doesn't have a lot, but he kind of makes a weird noise at one point, and it kind of felt like, you feel like you belong in the actual sequels to the original film, not this. And then the other one is that there's this random guy who he's like a wood chipper or something like that. But the dialogue,
like the guy that's like selling, he's like trying to sell weed.
Yeah, but the dialogue that comes out of his mouth is so absurdly weird and stupid that I'm like, you belong in something else. You belong in like Friday the 13th Part 7, not this one. This is so weird.
It felt like and I mean, I think we kind of still see it nowadays, but I think especially around the time there was this kind of like, you know, like random sense of humor where like, oh man, it's so funny if you just get someone to say like, you know, something like stupid that people don't actually say in real life, and then hey, that's super funny, and let's try to, insert this comedy in here, and because it even like Jared's character Clay, like he even has that like typical comedy reaction of like someone says something weird and he's like, okay, like kind of being all weirded out and dismissive of it, and it's like it's very off-putting. Like I can see like how some people think it's funny, but I didn't like it in this movie.
I'll save the rest of it for spoilers, but his first line, this guy's first line, because Clay kind of sneaks up behind him, not intentionally. He's working with a machine, so there's like a lot of noise, and he comes up and taps him on the shoulder, and the guy like turns around, kind of jumps, and like is ready to fight, and then sort of realizes that it's not actually a dangerous thing. But the line that comes out of his mouth is, "You're lucky, boy. I was about to press the button on this whoop ass machine." Or something like that. I was like, okay, and I'm like, this guy does not feel like he belongs in this movie. He feels like he belongs in a goofy 80s sequel, and it's like, which would be fine if they leaned into that with all of the other characters. If the whole movie felt like that, that'd be fine. Whatever, go for it. Be wacky, be weird. The problem is that the other characters are just like I say. I mean, it's literally made up of a cast of CW actors. It wants to be the CW. I mean, obviously, that's not entirely fair because obviously it's R-rated, so they're all doing things that CW characters would never do. But it's those types of actors. It's they're going for that kind of aesthetic, and it makes them very bland. It makes so. I'm actually out of curiosity. Which cut did you watch?
I'm pretty sure it's the killer cut.
Yeah.
Which because I have the Blu-ray on this, and it. Yeah, in big letters it says killer cut on it.
Okay, you watched the killer. I watched the killer cut as well. There is an option on the Blu-ray to switch to the theatrical one, which admittedly when I got to about an hour in and I was starting to like really want it to end, I kind of wished I had just so it'd be over quicker. But it is worth mentioning that the killer cut does add more to the violence and more of the nudity. So if you're watching a slasher movie, those feel like the important things. Yeah. So. And there is a decent amount of both that is worth mentioning, and one of the nudity scenes is actually very funny. So, maybe not intentionally so. Well, it's kind of intentional. It's kind of
okay. Like the sex scene.
Hey, you didn't think the sort of
nipple
almost
placement.
The nuanced commentary of your nipple placement is just perfect. Was.
I laughed at that.
Because keep in mind here, perfect nipple placement does of course lead to just incredible amounts of sperm, right? That's how this works.
Of course. Yeah, we've all taken 8th grade sex ed. We all know that.
So, I actually, one of the other things that I agreed with actually is that I prefer the Friday the 13th Part 2 section, which is like the sort of like prologue like period of like 10-15 minutes. I actually like that more than the rest of the movie, mainly just because the characters are just a little bit more goofy, so they're a bit more entertaining, and the kills are pretty reasonable in that part of the movie. There's some decent kills later on as well. Although this movie has a bad habit of like teasing certain murder weapons and then never using them.
Okay.
There's a moment in the middle of the film in a tool shed where it keeps focusing on a buzzsaw. And it never uses the buzzsaw for anything.
Yeah. That's annoying. And especially like in this movie, it makes sense. With Jason being, because I don't think it's kind of spoiler, but they're kind of trying to make him like the survivalist kind of almost mountain man or something. Like, so it would make sense if he's using like different tools and that kind of stuff. And he does use like different types of things to kill. Do you I don't know if do you watch Superstore at all?
No, but it was one of the other actors here in that.
They in the opening sequence, like the main character from that show was in here, so that was actually a funny surprise. I was like, oh hey, it's that sitcom guy. Yeah. But I actually do like this opening. Like I like how it kind of throws you for a loop, thinking like, and maybe this is like a little spoilery, but I mean this is like the first 5-10 minutes of the movie or whatever. But like making you think that this is kind of like the main characters, and then it's funny. I was watching it with my wife who was watching it for the first time, and she even commented like, "Wow, they're killing all the characters pretty quick." Like,
did you lean over at one point and go, "Oh, by the way, I took someone on a first date to see this movie once, so you should feel honored. You've come full circle.
My go-to.
Yeah. You thought, yeah, you had to wait until you were married for a year or so, Tim, before you could show your wife this movie. Yeah.
You had to try it again. Not mess it up this time. But no, like I do kind of like the opening, and some of the kills like are good throughout the movie, and like I do like that it is trying to go back to some of the like raunchiness and cheesiness like of the slasher movies that we know. So there is stuff that I appreciate. But yeah, just like overall, like I wouldn't say there's necessarily like a particularly good like style or anything to the movie.
I would say there is some fun kills through. I will also say that I kind of like, I think Derek Mears does a decent job playing Jason, and what I mean by that is that there's definitely moments once he's in the hockey mask where the way he'll sort of turn to look at things feels very Jason, and I was like, okay, he actually feels like he's doing a decent job feeling like Jason Voorhees. I think the problems is everything it tries to do with the backstory, the extra element that it adds to Jason. You know what I'm talking about, I think, but I won't say it until spoilers. I don't particularly like that, and I think the biggest sin that it has though is because the characters are so dull, and because I don't think the filmmaking is that interesting. Like, there's definitely individual moments where I think it does something kind of neat. There's one moment, for example, where he's on like a pier and the camera's looking up through the boards in the pier, and I thought, okay, that's actually a pretty cool shot.
Yeah. But
for the most part, I don't think the filmmaking actually makes the suspense of the kills that entertaining. So there's about a moment, I'd say give or take halfway through, where it kind of, I started to lose interest in the movie, and I stopped really paying as much attention to things, and I wasn't like as in like, because you're kind of, along with the right, it's a slasher movie, you're forgiving a lot of its like simplistic characters, and you're forgiving a lot of its simplistic plot elements, but there was a point where where it tries to start doing like the suspenseful stuff, and when you realize that that's just not working, and there's no fun building up to the kills. I guess that's the biggest complaint, is that there's not a lot of fun building up to the kills. Some of the kills themselves are alright, but I didn't necessarily get a lot out of the when's it going to happen or how's it going to happen suspense that a lot of the previous Friday the 13th succeed on. So
yeah, no, I agree, and like I think especially like it does feel very long. Like, I didn't look at the runtime, but like
the killer cut is an hour 45. The theatrical cut's 97 minutes, which is a bit more in line with what you expect.
Sounds more,
But the weird thing is though, is that the killer cut is actually genuinely, for the most part, extra little snippets of nudity and violence, and there's a few other things, but so if there's a pacing problem with the movie though, it's not the killer cut's fault. It's not the extra scenes that are making the pacing feel uneven. I think if you feel the because I felt the last 30 minutes felt really drawn out to me, and I think that's not because of the extended cut. I think that feels just as equally drawn out in the theatrical cut. I'd
agree with that. And I was just looking up the director Marcus Nispel to see what else he
I know
done.
He did the Texas Chainsaw remake.
Yeah, which I think that's another one. I think we're both not very positive on that. And I think that's another one that people remember a bit more fondly than I think it holds up. And I think myself included, because back in the day, I do think I probably would have said like, oh no, like the Chainsaw remake is pretty good. And then I think when we went back and redid it for the show, I was like, oh no, actually, it hasn't like aged too well.
No, it didn't age well at all.
I just feel like he's like doesn't really have like much of an interesting take on things, other than it's like I don't know, if you're gonna like remake or reboot stuff, like I feel like there has to be like a good reason for it, other than like I feel like they just like were like, well, it's just a good excuse to make it modern, and then we'll just throw in like dumb snippets of the story and everything, and it just doesn't I don't know, work for me.
Yeah, and even some of the stuff that he's trying to add feels kind of undercooked as well. Like there's a point in the last act where a character tries to use something, and it's not necessarily that dissimilar to something that was used in Friday the 13th Part 2, but it doesn't feel like set up well enough. Where
totally not.
It bizarrely, do you know what it oddly feels like? It feels like it almost is trying to get by in the fact that a lot of the audience will know some of this stuff from the previous movies, which is kind of bullshit when it's supposed to be a remake for new audiences. Like, it doesn't, you don't get a free pass on that. It's weird. So that is very odd, but yes, I guess we'll get to spoilers so we can talk about stuff a bit more properly. So first things first, let me thank the Patreon producers. This is at the time of recording, and the reason why I'm specifying that is because this is being recorded quite a bit in advance of when it's going out. We're recording this, it's still June, right? the bright sunlight behind me is clearly displaying that it's actually summer right now at the time of recording. But I will thank her. But we do thank our Patreon producers in the episode, and I can't really. So the list at the end, because I won't edit it until October, it will probably maybe be a little bit different. But thank you to Alison M. Fordyce, Tyler Hess, Cindy Palacios, David Short, Bordenau, and Zammer Jammer for being Patreon producers. You can be a producer as well for $20 or more at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV. But obviously, you're thinking, wait, $20 a month? That's a lot. It is, which is why you can support us for as little as $1 per month, and that $1 per month will get you access to a bonus episode every month. In fact, during the October-thon, it'll get you access to 4 bonus episodes. We do 4 for October because we're nut jobs and we just can't help ourselves, basically. So yeah, go and do that. $5 gets you access to voting every month, as well as early access to all the episodes by a day, which is why it's weird. But in the October-thon starts on the last day of September for patrons, because that's just how it works. So there you go. But yeah, go and check out Patreon. Alright, so full spoilers then for the Friday the 13th remake from 2009. I guess the first thing we kind of want to talk about then is the fact that the sister that is with the initial group, the sister that Jared Padalecki is looking for, is alive.
You just say Clay.
I'll just say Clay. Yeah. So Clay's sister is alive, and basically she's been held captive because she looks like Jason's mum. And it's not like a super stretch, because they did, in Friday the 13th Part 2, there's the whole bit where Amy Steele pretends to be the mother, and it kind of works for like a minute. Yeah. So it's not like a ridiculous stretch based on stuff that was in the original movies. I don't necessarily love it though either. It feels kind of, I don't know, like just weird that Jason would have someone captive for 6 weeks. Like, what's he doing with her? Is he feeding her? Is he giving her, like...
Well, it's also like, yeah, I mean, that was one thing I was thinking of, yeah, because I was like, okay, yeah, what does he want with her? Like, is he doing like, something gross to it, or is it more just to, have his mom there? But I don't know. Well,
I mean, it's because she looks like his mother, so I assume it's not a sexual thing, but
hopefully, yeah.
Because if it is, oh boy.
Yes.
Oh boy.
That would be. Hey, that's just the kind of gritty reboot the series needed.
I don't. I didn't get that impression. But as bizarre as it sounds, even Jason Voorhees is better than Harvey Weinstein, apparently.
True.
Jason's equal opportunity serial killer.
Oh, of course. Now, so the one thing though, like, where I think something like that angle works better in the original series is because of like, and maybe even when you go back to watch like earlier movies, maybe you're bringing stuff from the whole franchise over, but like I feel like trying to trick Jason by like acting like his mother and stuff works better when like Jason is this kind of like weird like child spirit in an undead deadite body or whatever the hell kind of like explanation they have, versus like this movie where he's just kind of like a normal guy in this, right? Like there's no like supernatural stuff going on.
Well, that's the thing that they kind of retcon at the start, is that because the start over the credits, we get like sort of quick glimpses of the end of the first movie, but remade, which is Jason's mother is the killer, and the counselor, presumably the new version of Alice, is decapitating her. Is that they add in this idea that Jason witnessed this, that Jason was alive and he witnessed this, Which, by the way, did you think it was weird that Jason actually has a house in Crystal Lake now? He's not just like the kid who was at the camp. Because he has a bed. He has a bed that says Jason on it. So it's clearly his bed. It's not just in the camp, which is weird. But
I mean, doesn't this beg the question, though? Like, all right, so why was the mother killing counselors then if Jason is alive?
Well, because she still says you should have been watching him, so I presume that he still kind of died. Did she know that he was actually still alive? I don't know. I mean,
I don't know.
It doesn't really explain that. So here's a detail that I noticed, which I thought is just like, I don't know if this is like a weird way of trying to explain why he likes hockey masks, but when the characters are looking through his bedroom, there is like a hockey trophy on the shelf, which made me groan so much. Like, this is your we have to overly explain everything about a thing, you know. This is it's not quite Halloween remake levels of bad, but it's
right.
It made me groan. Like, I was definitely not on board with this. Jason was a hockey fan when he was a kid. That's why he likes hockey masks.
That's too much. And like, I wish like he could have just like started with the hockey mask. Like, we all know he wears a hockey mask. Like, just do that. Like, I didn't like where like halfway through the movie he just randomly finds one and is like, okay.
Well, I have a couple of thoughts on this. First of all, I do kind of like that he doesn't start off in the hockey mask, because I actually appreciate that he starts off with the sack. You know, the Friday the 13th Part 2 sack.
Reference to that, yeah.
But also because it just looks cool. I thought he looked kind of good running around with that sack in his head. But
the original sack boy.
To kind of defend like how he finds the mask to a point, because I agree that it's just kind of this random thing where he just sees the mask and picks it up. It's not really that much less of a thing than, because the Friday the 13th Part 3, the only sort of more to it is that Shelley's wearing the mask first, so it kind of establishes that a character's using the mask.
Sure.
But I mean, it's not that much more intricate than it is here, where he just finds it and he puts it on. I mean, the fact that it kind of treats like a big deal where he walks into the mirror or up to the mirror and like looks at himself, it is maybe a bit much, but like, it's not like the. I guess what I'm trying to say is that it wasn't that much better in the original movies, but at least in the original movies, it wasn't like a big thing yet. You know, like, here there's so much baggage where Jason's the guy who wears the hockey mask, whereas in Friday the 13th Part 3, where he got the hockey mask, that wasn't like an iconic thing yet. It was just, he needs a mask. Oh, there's a hockey mask lying there, so he's going to put that on, and then it became a thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's why I don't like it, because it's like, at this point we know it's his thing. Like, you know, if he just finds it, like, that's fine. But yeah, it's the whole like reverence that it's taken, where it's like, you know, he's looking at it like it's this mystical object, and then he puts it on, looks in the mirror, like, that's what kind of irks me.
I agree with that. No, you're right. So actually, this is right after he kills the mechanic, the wood chipper guy, or whatever he is. I want to talk about this guy a little bit, because he's got a scene here. He's getting high, and he pulls out a porn magazine, and he's looking at the centerfold, and he starts licking the page.
It's gross.
And saying things like, "You like that, bitch?" Like, you know, he says that. And all I can think is, it's paper. What is it's not woman, it's not flesh, it's not skin, it's paper. You're licking paper.
It's very gross.
Right? However, it almost kind of retroactively justified, and when I say justified, I mean justified, like, because here I was like, is he just like what are you getting out of this? But a minute later, he goes up to like the upper part of this like barn, and he finds a mannequin, and he starts. I can't remember the name of the mannequin. He says, but he calls her something. He's like, "Oh, it's you, Judy. You remember when you took my virginity, Judy? I'm going to pump you so hard." And I'm like, "Wait, what? Okay, this guy's just got serious issues. This guy is just too far gone." Like, the page licking just makes sense now because of what he's like. Okay, he's just this weird. All right.
It just feels like too try hard to me. Like, it feels like they think this pervy guy is so funny, and oh my god, what if he has a mannequin that he like has sex with, and like gives his name. And
this is what I was saying about how this character feels like he belongs in one of the sequels to the original. Like, in the 80s, I can see this character kind of like oddly working, like this being this weird kooky character is in, you know, Friday the 13th Part 6 or something. I don't know. Pick your number. So I can kind of see that working, but he feels so out of place in this. It's very weird. But hey, although that said, this movie's version of Crazy Ralph is much more subdued. It's just this random angry old woman. Because obviously Clay's going around like trying to post flyers of his missing sister, and this woman's just like, oh, she ain't missing, boy, she dead. People go missing around here. The locals know where to go. The outsiders don't. Although this guy who got killed in the barn is a local, so
that's what I always found that really confusing, because it. All right, so is he either like this known entity in the town that you just know to stay away from, or like, or is he someone that will actually like come for you? Which, like, was he coming for that guy because he stole his weed? Like, is that why?
I think I got the impression that no one knows who Jason is. It's more just that something happens to people, so they know to stay away from certain areas, I guess. I don't know. Okay. Honestly, my biggest issue with Jason, because I thought it looked good, and I thought the body language was good. The bigger problem I had with him was the way it kind of treated, like, because you said earlier that he's treated like more of a human, and the big thing for me is, so after Clay and oh god, what's her face from The Flash? Yes, the woman.
Was someone named Whitney?
Jenna.
I forget.
Jenna. Whitney was the
sister.
Yeah, she was a sister. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, Jenna, right? So once Jenna and Clay kind of team up, because her douchebag boyfriend, whose house it is that they're all going to, is a real dickhead to Clay. But Jenna feels bad for him looking for his sister, so she goes with him, and they end up stumbling.
I have a quick question though. Wait, so Jenna, was she actually Trent's girlfriend? Because it seems like they're supposed to be, but then like later on in the movie, it seems like they just. Like Trent is like pretty casual about just hooking up with like the other person. I
thought they were meant to be a boyfriend girlfriend. Yes.
Okay.
There's several scenes that clearly imply that.
Okay. Because there's a couple of times where like, I mean, first of all, she seems very readily to like just like, like leave him like the minute he like, she's obviously very nice and he's obviously super douchebag, so it doesn't really make sense that they're together anyway. But I don't know, there's like a couple of times where I was like questioning like some of the people's relationships, and like even the like the other friends and stuff. You would think if you're gonna spend a weekend like at a cabin with a bunch of friends that you would all be like pretty close, but then like there are times where like I don't know, some of them are acting like they barely like know each other or something. Like I forget what like the exact lines are, but I think like like Chewie and stuff would be saying something to him, and it's like, oh, isn't that something you should know if you're like close friends or whatever? Or like I don't know, it was weird.
Yeah, but anyway, so once Jenna and Clay like go off together, they end up stumbling into the camp and the cabins and all that. And they're searching around, and we see like the Jason room and blah blah blah. They they eventually realize that like there's something weird going on here, and they see Jason coming. Jason's already killed a couple. We'll go back. We'll talk about the kills later. We'll go to all the kills, but Jason's like carrying a dead body back at the camp. So they hide underneath like all the canoes that are all like stacked up, and. What I thought was weird about this scene, and this is kind of maybe my biggest problem with like how I don't know if it's a problem per se, but it's definitely different, is the idea that we see Jason kind of like find this backpack that's lying around, and he realizes that someone's here, and he goes and like turns on all the floodlights, and he starts looking around, and he's like flipping things over because he's mad. And I felt weird to me that I don't think in the franchise up until this point we've ever quite had a scene where, I mean, we've had scenes where Jason's looking for someone and when he's stalking them, or we've had scenes like, but just seeing him kind of like turn on the lights as if like, because in the old movies, like Jason would always kind of just know where to be, he would know where to go to sneak around or whatever. This kind of made him feel a bit more like, he's actually a human who just has to like plan things or whatever. Now, of course, the movie doesn't necessarily stay true to this as it goes on, though, because later on in the movie he does pop up randomly because it's good for the scare.
Well, I think like the whole thing they're trying to say is that like there are these series of like underground tunnels all around um the town or the camp or whatever, and that like it seems like very unnecessary explanation to, oh, how is he always able to, pop up in these places or be where you least expect them. And I think they're trying to say like, oh, he has these series of underground tunnels and stuff, which I thought was stupid.
Yeah, but I just mean like the perspectives that we get here we never really had in the franchise before. Like
sure.
Seeing him turn on lights and kind of look around because he's worried that someone might be there. It feels like we've never seen Jason kind of like, I don't know, or even just the idea of like him sitting down when he's got his captive, like the captive sister in this like basement, and he starts like sharpening his machete. We've never seen Jason like prep, or we've never seen Jason like on his own. What's he doing when he's just hanging out when there's no one to kill?
Yeah,
it was kind of weird. It was like a weird little thing to add in there that I don't know if I necessarily like, because it takes away from just the unstoppable zombie that he is. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely say that's not what I didn't appreciate it. Like, I mean, again, it's a different take if that's what you want to go for with him, but yeah, I always like it more when he's just treated as this unstoppable force of nature. Like, it's not like anytime you watch any of the original movies you're like, geez, how does his machete get so sharp? Like, if only there was a scene that could show us that. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think it's I think maybe I get what you're saying, where it's like, yeah, maybe it's not like the worst thing to have in this movie, but it's also, it feels unnecessary. I don't think it's...
Yeah, it's not the worst thing that they've added by any means, but it does kind of feel like it betrays the mystique of Jason a little bit. Like, I don't need to see how Jason prepares for his kills, Like, I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying I don't want to see him like pick up a weapon or something like that, like, as foreshadowing, because that's just fun. Sure. That's happened before, that's just fun stuff, but it felt weird to me to like just get all this glimpse into what he's like when no one else is around. I'm like, nah, that's not really a Jason-y thing. And admittedly, maybe they're trying to separate him from like Michael Myers, because obviously there's a lot of similarities between them, but I don't know, it felt a bit weird to me. It kind of stuck out to me, but
I agree.
Yeah. So obviously the first kills are in the prologue scene. We should probably talk about that first. The very first one, which is a sort of nerdy guy when he goes off on his own, is just kind of a simple stabbing, really. Nothing really super exciting about it. But there is some comedy here. There's the sort of like the girl flirting with her boyfriend like behind his back, and kind of undressing as the nerd. He's just I say nerd. It's just the best way to describe him. He's not really that much of a nerd in the grand scheme of things. But like they get killed. They get separated. He goes out to, because they think they're being watched by someone, so the guy like goes out to but by the way, there's a bit of a running joke in this about guys finishing early, because this sex scene in the tent before he goes to like search, because they think the nerd guy's like spying on them, he's kind of like, she's like saying, oh, don't come yet, like I'm almost there, and he's like, no, I've got about 8 seconds and then later on in the sex scene with the douchebag and the girl with the perfect nipple placement, like again, like he's constantly saying like, oh, I don't know if I can go much longer, like it's kind of a running joke for some reason in the movie, but whatever. Again,
I feel like they're trying to do like, just, I don't know, this kind of raunchy comedy that I don't really think works. I mean, I feel like it's fine, but yeah, none of those kind of jokes really did much for me.
It's okay. Like, I chuckled a little bit at the nipple placement thing in the later section.
Like that stuff like is kind of so over the top and ridiculous. Like that, yeah. Like some of that stuff was funny, but
I kind of like. I guess it's kind of because I want the movie to be over the top and ridiculous. It kind of takes itself too seriously, too often. Is kind of maybe the bigger problem. Because everything with Clay and Jenna looking for the sister, like those characters are just so like dull and drab and dreary, and it's all taken very seriously that it's hard to really give a shit or have any fun with them. But anyway, so like so we have that kill, and
then in the beginning I didn't mention it too, but I guess basically what these this group is doing is like they're trying to find like this weed farm or whatever that they've heard is out here. But
the actual kills here is the girl in the tent is it's kind of a homage to the sleeping bag kills, but instead of being whacked against a tree, she's hung upside down in the sleeping bag above the fire, and it's like gradually catching fire. She's cooking inside the sleeping bag, which I thought was a fun kill. Like I thought that was actually a neat thing. The guy, the boyfriend, as he's coming back to her, because he's found the ear of the first guy that died, he basically trips into a bear trap, and it looks pretty nasty. I thought the effect on the leg looked really good.
Yeah.
It felt like his foot was actually kind of only loosely connected to his leg.
Yeah, it's pretty gross.
Yeah. So.
But I really like the sleeping bag kill, and I thought like especially like gruesome once it starts catching fire and kind of coming apart, and then the body like slides out of it. Like I thought it was pretty cool. Yeah,
it's kind of like the only time in the movie, because I said it takes itself a little bit too seriously, and that it could be due with being a bit goofier. But I will admit that these couple of deaths here, the way he's like watching her cook as his leg is like falling apart and he can't like help her. This was the one time where I thought the actual like sort of like I thought, oh, maybe this could be like a really vicious Jason. Like this is like a more of a vicious killer than he's been in the past, and you could feel that nastiness in it. But unfortunately, I don't know if that actually holds up. Even though I do like some of the kills later. The kills after this, because I do actually like the visual of Jason running towards the sister, because right before it cuts to black, he's got the sack on and he runs towards her and like sort of swings the machete. I do actually like the visual of that. I think the visual of him running is fine, because I don't have a problem with him running around. I'm actually okay with it. Although he does kind of slow down once he's got the hockey mask, which I guess kind of follows, because if you go back to Friday the 13th Part 2, you do see him running in that movie.
Yeah.
He was not like a slow stalker before that. I'm not against Jason doing a little bit of running.
I'm not crazy about it. I mean, if you are gonna do it, I guess I wouldn't mind as much in something like this. It's like a, reboot or whatever. But yeah, and when we went back and like we're watching all the originals, and he was like running around in the second one. I wasn't crazy about it, and I mean. And I know it is like it's weird, because it's like, well, that did kind of come first before he was that kind of more silent stocky type. But
it's kind of interesting that it only does it in that section though, so they're kind of honoring the fact that he ran with the sack, but once he's got the hockey mask, he's more of a Michael Myers.
It is kind of an interesting idea to like almost remake like like a bunch of movies in one, instead of like just doing a remake of the first one. Like that is kind of an interesting idea. I don't think they necessarily, did it successfully here, but that's kind of a cool attempt, I guess.
That's an interesting idea. But no, I like most of the kills in this first section of the movie. Not that there's no good ones after. The next kills are probably maybe that guy with the mannequin was next, but the first of the kids, or I say kids, they're like college age, is actually, speaking of people in the CW, the blonde guy who goes out to the boat with his girlfriend, he was on Veronica Mars, so there's more CW people.
And iZombie, I believe, as well.
Oh, you're right, he was an iZombie. Yeah, he was, which was the same creator as Veronica Mars, which was why he popped up in both. I thought this pair of kills were actually kind of fun. So the girl's jet skiing behind the boat, right? And I have to admit that I thought the arrow going through the guy's head was actually kind of surprisingly sudden. Like I didn't see it coming. It just kind of all of a sudden there's an arrow through his head, and I'm like, huh. And plus, because as much as I don't like Jason having like all these like tripwires and stuff to like tell when people are in the camp, I do kind of like the idea of him using a bow and arrow for a kill. Yeah, I think that's kind of interesting.
Did he use one in a movie before?
I don't remember. He's definitely used an arrow. I don't know if he used a bow and arrow.
Okay.
He's definitely thrown a spear.
Maybe that's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah, that may be what you're thinking of. But
I think I was thinking of like like a part in maybe part 3 or something. But no, I mean I agree though. Like I like the it's a simple kill. But I thought it was pretty cool.
No, it looks good. And then the boat actually hits her in the head, so she's kind of delirious, and she ends up hiding under the pier. And Jason, I don't know how Jason like walks away, because the whole time he's like sneaking up there, we're looking through the boards and the pier. He actually it's a really good shot, but he's constantly creaking. There's a lot of creaking of the boards as he's walking around. And it shows some restraint. It's silent. There's no music here. But then he does the thing where he like managed to like sort of like walk away and then stab through the boards, and it goes right through the top of her head, and he lifts up the blade, and her head hits the pier. So, and she's topless. It's worth mentioning she's topless here. So she lifts up, and the boobs come out, and her head hits the boards, and then she slides off the blade. Again, it's a fun little kill. It's all right. Yeah. Like, you know, I think up until this point, the kills are generally fun. I think the problem starts to come because these ones don't have a lot of suspense before the kills. These are mostly just the kills happen and they're kind of fun and they're all right. After this is when it starts to try and build up to them. You know, we have the Chewy guy who goes to the shed to get a tool, and he ends up, like, you know, playing with the hockey stick and all that. This is when it starts to kind of become a bit of a chore to get through the scenes to get to the kills. I thought.
Yeah, because like there's so much like drunken antics beforehand, and again, it's like I think they are trying to do like a lot of comedy stuff where it just it doesn't really work for me. Like I like just get it over with. Like just get to the kills. Like I don't need to see like all these scenes of him like drinking and then like talking to himself, making fun of like Trent and everything. Like just get to it.
And bizarrely, at one point the other guy, maybe it's Trent, the one you're talking about, he tries to like start masturbating randomly in the middle of the living room, and I thought, why not go to the bathroom if you're going to do this? Like why
this
here?
This was really weird. I forget. I think Trent's like the main like asshole who owns the cabin.
Oh, Trent's the main asshole. Okay, who am I thinking of then? What's his name? It's not Wade. Hold on. Not Richie. It's Lawrence. Yeah. There you go.
And like, this scene is so weird. And then, I actually like forgot about it. But then when you mentioned the earlier scene where the guy was looking in the magazine, I was like, oh yeah, there's like two like weird magazine bits in this. But yeah, like he's gonna like start masturbating. It's just so weird.
It's to a catalog because he's looking for someone pretty to masturbate to. Yeah. And he finds someone who it's just like a woman like sipping a coffee. He's like, well, this'll do.
Yeah, which is like I guess it's like mildly amusing, but like it's like just so weird that like I'm surely you have a room that you can go to do that.
Yeah, anyone can literally walk in and you hear, because it's a very open like plan like living room. There's the stairs come down into it, like the kitchen looks into it.
You know what's kind of funny is like so much of like the dumb kind of like raunchy sex jokes like didn't really work for me, but like the one thing that I did think was kind of funny that they really didn't like explore that much is the idea that like Trent is like super sensitive about everything in the house, so like he's trying to make sure everything's perfect and like trying to make sure people aren't breaking stuff. Like I think that's like a much funnier like runner that you could have done with like especially once things start going crazy and Jason arrives and you can have them like using stuff as weapons or Jason breaking stuff trying to get in and like him freaking out. Like to me, like I think there'd be more comedy that you could mine, other than like hey, this guy's gonna masturbate.
Well, something you mentioned earlier is that he ends up having sex with the perfect nipple placement girl. That's basically what she is now. But he just sort of decides to do this kind of randomly because she's kind of into the idea. And then they have, admittedly, a relatively funny sex scene because of all the dialogue they're having as they're going at it. But like it's after this where Clay and Jenna come back and they're like, "Hey, we saw someone with a dead body. There's someone out there killing people." And that's when Jason cuts the power and basically at this point. Because they get Chewie who went out to the thing, even though they teased the buzzsaw and the hockey stick, he actually died via screwdriver through the chin, which is it was okay, but it was like you teased the buzzsaw. Come on, you teased the buzzsaw. But Lawrence goes out.
There's at least like some tension when he was kind of like, struggling, like trying to hold it back from like going into his head, like. So I think there's at least something there. Yeah.
Lawrence goes out though. It's like, hey, I'll go out and check things out to get his friend back. And he goes out with like a wok, from the kitchen. As like a shield. Which, I notely pointed out is probably the inspiration for Captain America, just, putting it out there.
Okay.
And he gets an axe thrown at his back, and Jason leaves him alive as bait, as they point out. And that's kind of that. But once Jason's getting to the house and he's killing people, We have this thing where Trent gets a gun, and he there's a moment where we know that the nipple girl was impaled by Jason on some antler, like, you know, antlers on like one of the heads, because Trent's dad's like a hunter or whatever, so there's like moose heads and stuff all around. He actually just randomly starts shooting through the door at one point when he hears a noise, and he opens the door and sees her dead body there. It's been clearly shot a bunch of times, and we know that she was murdered by Jason, but he could have been under the assumption here that he actually shot her by accident, and he just kind of like says, "Oh, Jason killed her. He killed what's her face," and they run. Unfortunately, I was looking forward to his death because he's such a douchebag. Unfortunately, his death's kind of one of the least interesting. I mean, I do kind of like the visual of Jason holding the machete on both ends, because he sort of stabs him and then holds the front of the machete and picks him up. And I thought, okay, that's a mildly interesting visual, but for the most part, it's kind of it's boring. It's like the most boring death of the movie.
They do so much to make you hate him. Like, he's really like despicable, and like, again, you know, just going back to that point of like, a lot of times when you watch like the older movies, like, they'll be douchey guys, but in a much charming way. He's like douchey where like you really, really don't like him. So yeah, I could have definitely used maybe something a little more gruesome or painful.
Yeah. They actually call, because there was a cop early on in the movie who is also an actor I recognized actually, who's basically just there to like tell Clay to leave town, that it's hopeless, stop looking for your sister. He gets called out because they phone the police, so this sheriff comes around in the middle of everything, and Jason just instantly kills him. As soon as he goes to the front door, Jason shows up and kills him. That's it, he's dead. And that's basically it. So that's part of the movie's kind of where it starts to feel like it really drags, because the characters then run back to the camp and where the houses are. They find Clay's sister, and we didn't even mention there's a whole part in the middle, like when they're on the way back to the house, where Clay's sister actually manages to escape and, and runs away, and she actually runs up to the house as the funny sex scene's happening, and she's just about to bang in the window when Jason just appears from behind her and grabs her and pulls her back. It was a thing. It was there.
Seems like pretty unnecessary. Yeah, it's like a funny visual when, you know, she's like running up to it, but they're too busy having sex to notice. Like, but that's a long way to go for like a simple gag like that.
I mean, I kind of see what they're trying to do here. I guess the problem is that I just don't think there's that much excitement in Jason having someone captive and keeping them. The excitement is in Jason is killing people, right? And like, you know, I will say that once they find the sister, right, and they're all happy that you know they found her, they're kind of sneaking around, they're running away from Jason. There is kind of a shock death here where Jason stabs Jenna, and I thought, oh, okay, that's interesting, because she was kind of the lead. So, you know, she was the female lead of the movie, and she's now been killed. And I thought, okay, that's interesting. If anything, I thought, you know, maybe the guy will die, Clay will die, and the two girls will survive, or whatever. So I did not expect her to die. So fair play there, I guess. I mean, it's mild praise, but it's something. From there, you know, it looks like Clay gets killed at one point because he gets his head bashed in, but Jason didn't actually finish the job because he just pops up later. He's fine. Mild sore head, I guess. They ultimately kind of win because they tease the wood chipper. They actually use the wood chipper, so fair play to a point. But Jason doesn't really go in the wood chipper. He gets just kind of like, he ends up just kind of like leaning against it, because he gets like a chain around his neck, and the chain's in the wood chipper dragging him towards it. But then he just kind of like sort of is sitting on top of it, like kind of like bumping up and down a little bit. So the movie ends with them putting his body into the lake along with the mask. And I thought, why are you putting him in the water? All these dead bodies, the police are going to ask questions. Wouldn't it be wise to have the killer there to say, hey, it was him? You know, aren't you going to be suspicious, you know, of you because you were here and all these dead bodies are around? And it basically just copies the end of the original, where it's all tranquil, they think they've won, and Jason pops up through the boards of the pier and grabs her, and that's the end of the movie. Fairly uninspired as things go. It's kind of a shame that it's kind of weird actually, because the first half of the kills are kind of fun to a point, and then the second half of the movie, the kills are just kind of boring, and I think the suspense of the kills is the worst part because it kind of drags down the pacing and they're just not that exciting like they should be. But then the kills themselves are just not that fun. Jenna just gets killed by getting stabbed through the chest with a machete. That's not that fun compared to all the other stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I think ultimately it's kind of a mess. Like there's a lot of characters which I like because it means that like there's gonna be a lot of kills, but I don't know. I feel like we just kind of spend a little too much time with some of them, especially like like ultimately Clay is kind of like the main character, but I feel like you don't really get that sense like for maybe like until like I don't know halfway through the movie or something, because for a while I kind of feel like that. That group of, kids up at the cabin are going to be like, the main characters and stuff. And then maybe like Clay will kind of be like this guy that comes in and saves the day at the end or something. But yeah, I feel like there's, I don't know, so much like back and forth between two characters. And then like, there's like a lot of things where, like a lot of back and forth between like, we're in the underground tunnels, and then now we're back at the camp, and now we're going back to the tunnels or back to the town, and
I think
it just feels a little sloppy to me.
That element's definitely a bit sloppy. I think my bigger problem though is just that it takes itself too seriously most of the time. Sure. Characters aren't likable. It's it tries to add too much. I mean, it's not even that it's adding too much backstory, because most of the backstory is technically in the original movies, but it wasn't in the first movie. Like. The first movie was just the mum, and then the second movie added the idea of him worshipping the mum, and and it tries to do maybe a little bit too much, like adding stuff to that, adding the room and the hockey statue and all that stuff. I think, and then on top of that, I don't like how much it kind of tries to make Jason more human, which I think is just uninteresting and like not part of the fun. So, but taking itself too seriously is probably the biggest problem.
Yeah, like I think I definitely agree with that, and I think a lot of the problems with these remakes of like popular franchises, because like if you're gonna remake some like weird thing from 40 years ago that no one really cares about or knows too much about, like fine, just do whatever, but like if you're gonna remake something that's like a beloved franchise with a bunch of entries in it, like there's probably a reason why people like it. And so I feel like, they always want to like turn it on its head or do something new. And it's like, no, like that's why do you want to do that with something that's already established that people like? Like, there's a reason why people are coming to these movies, and it's not because, we want a new backstory or whatever. Like, just kind of do the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, that's a double-edged argument though, because for the most part, I don't want new entries of everything. It's kind of unique to like slasher movies where I'm happy to just keep getting slasher movies from it.
right, yeah.
Whereas with other things I would say no, don't bother doing anything unless you do actually have something new to say. But I don't come to a slasher movie because I want them to say something. I come to a slasher movie because I want fun kills and goofy characters and all these things. Yeah,
like these are the kind of movies I'm talking about. Like, really talking more about like, these kind of like Friday the 13th or Texas Chainsaw Massacre kind of movies, where it's like, you don't need to, if you're gonna remake them, like, well, first of all, like you probably don't need to, but if you're gonna do it, like you don't really need to break the mold and start from scratch. Like there's a lot of reasons why we already like it.
Texas Chainsaw especially was obsessed with adding backstory, and to the point where it's done it multiple times in different ways.
It's so much.
Yeah, and it's like, no, just stop it. Just stop it right now. What are you doing? So it's very frustrating in that sense. That said, though, it's not the worst Friday the 13th movie, I don't think.
No. I mean, are we going to have to rank them now that we finished the franchise?
All of them? I suppose maybe we should. Let's probably rate this one first, and then we can compare the franchise as a whole. So, what do you give it, I guess? I don't know. I was trying to think, but you go first.
I think I'm going to give it a 5.5. Like it's definitely not the worst of the series. And as far as remakes go, again, I wouldn't use this as an example of being like good, but I mean, it's definitely not as much of an offender as like a lot of other remakes that you can point to.
Oh yeah, the Halloween remake is way worse than this. There's no question in my mind.
Yeah, but like no, like the kills are okay. It is fairly watchable. yeah, there's good gore and stuff, but yeah, like everything you said, like a lot of the characters are very annoying. They're either like overly annoying or overly bland. Like, Clay and Jenna are just, pretty much just blank slates. They're just good because they're good. They're the good guys. No real personality or anything to them. But again, though, if you're coming here for your typical slasher stuff, like, hey, I want to see some some boobs and gore, like it does that pretty well, so it can't be like too harsh on it.
Yeah, I'll probably give it a straight 5. I think, there's some fun kills. It's not a complete train wreck, but it takes itself too seriously, which ultimately lands it in thorough mediocre territory overall. And then, all the other things we've talked about. So, yeah, not the worst. Which I guess leads us to actually kind of, I don't know, decide, like, yeah, this is tough. I was not prepared for this, to be honest.
Well, why don't we do wait, what was there was another franchise where we did like a little, didn't we rank these before on like a mini episode or something?
Oh, we did we tiered Nightmare on Elm Street. We were saying we could do that for this separately.
Yeah, well, maybe we can do something like that, because I'd have to put a little more thought on it, because
okay.
And I know I've ranked them before, like, but
we should do a separate tier video like we did for Nightmare on Elm Street. Yeah, you're right. We should do that. And give it some more thought and actually argue it out a little bit. Yeah, I will say this is not the worst one. I mean, like,
no.
Jason Goes to Hell is still definitely the worst one, and there is not a doubt in my mind of that. So,
I 100% agree.
So yeah, but that is the Friday the 13th remake. We have officially finished the franchise. We're up to date, so that if they ever make another one, we can jump straight into it and then add it to the playlist, and we've already got them all there. So
I guess we just gotta do the series now.
Oh god. If you have made it this far, put the word nipple into the comments, because as we know, stupendous nipple placement leads to just an incredible amount of sperm. And if you're wondering where the incredible amount of sperm joke is coming from, check out the Patreon exclusive episode on the Incubus for where that joke originated. But that is that. So you can also like and is really important on YouTube. It lets the algorithm know that you recommend us out to other people, so please do. That's an easy and free way to support us. You can also support us, as we mentioned earlier, on Patreon. Patreon.com/MailFistTV. Get some exclusives, all that jazz. You can get us on Twitter @StreamsMidnight for updates and shenanigans, but otherwise that is us. So hopefully you're enjoying the Octoberthon. We're recording this so early, we don't even know what the rest of the movies are yet. We know what some of them are, but not a lot of them. So hopefully you're having fun with the Octoberthon. Hopefully there's some fun stuff happening, and we'll see you again very soon. So thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching scary movies, guys, and remember to